Well, Vietnam is one of many countries in the region hoping to benefit from more open trade. To find out how that could impact Vietnam's economy, I spoke to Marc Mealy, Vice President for Policy at the US-ASEAN Business Council. I began by asking about the importance of Vietnam hosting the Apec meeting.
Significant, and this year the government of Vietnam has really turned its hosting of APEC almost into like a global foreign direct investment promotion event. They recognize there's going to be business leaders from all over the APEC countries that are going to be visiting. They're really rolling out the red carpet. They're showing opportunities for projects and investment opportunities, and really I think highlighting the kinds of areas that I think they think are really poised for further growth. So it's a big deal for them.
Now let's look at some of those areas. We know that growth has consistently hovered around 6%, and then most recently it spiked to near 7%. So what are some of the fundamental growth drivers there?
Sure. I think Vietnam's done a fantastic job here in one, attracting a lot of foreign investment. They've done about $30 billion in additional FDI this year. Exports for the country have been, again, also I think at record highs. They're already at about $150 billion in exports, from electronics, about $50 billion. Food and agricultural products, another $30 billion, textiles and apparel in the $20 billions. So export's been very, very helpful. And last but not least, the tourism sector, quite honestly, has also been a very important source of growth this year, particularly with a real big influx in tourism from Chinese visitors.
Now, you yourself actually visited Vietnam earlier this year. Were there any areas that you thought had untapped or unrealized potential that Vietnam could really capitalize on?
Sure. I think, for many U.S. companies that are, of course, very active in the Vietnamese market, there are, I think, challenges that Vietnam is facing as it's really pursuing this kind of rapid growth agenda, whether it be in terms of urban development, smart city planning, how to do better at managing sort of industrial waste as they go through rapid industrialization. These kinds of areas actually offer opportunities for companies to say, we have products, we have solutions that can really fit where Vietnam is in terms of its own economic development trajectory.
And speaking of economic development, obviously in the region, a lot of people are wondering what's going to happen with Belton Road and how it's going to affect the countries along that path. How do you see Vietnam's success tying into the Belton Road? I think
the Belton Road, along with the Asia Infrastructure Bank, those initiatives are relevant for many of the countries in the region. I'm sure there'll be projects that will be supported, particularly infrastructure activities, which is another one of the areas where Vietnam does face some additional challenges. They need more energy. They need better transportation linkages. So I think One Belt, One Road can be one source of many potential suppliers of investment to support those kinds of activities.
So if you looked at some of the issues or the sectors that are putting some economic pressure on Vietnam, what do you think they might be?
Well, I think Vietnam's, again, its sort of rapid industrial development is going to continue to put pressure on, one, the importance of developing human capital in the country. So there's going to be a continued need for better training of its workers, getting more people into higher education. I think another particularly important area for the country is how to really support more innovation or technology-driven types of development. And there, I think, how well Vietnam is able to really incentivize, sort of startups and entrepreneurs using technology is going to be one of those areas where they do face some challenges. They'll have to figure out how to really find a good mix of policies and regulations that can encourage those types of activities going forward.
Now, something that Vietnam did pin a lot of its hopes on was the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or the TPP, which we essentially saw the hopes of that almost dashed as the U.S. decided to pull out. How do you think Vietnam could potentially offset the loss that they would have had the TPP gone through?
Well, it's interesting. While America, as you know, did decide to pull out of the agreement, the remaining 11 countries, including Vietnam, have continued those negotiations. And in fact, we are hearing some initial reports today that on the sidelines of the APEC summit, the trade ministers from the 11 remaining countries, including Vietnam, have potentially reached a new agreement on the TPP, which for all accounts, Vietnam would stand to be one of the biggest beneficiaries of that agreement if it go into force. I think it does provide some new opportunities if they are successful in terms of preferential market access in big markets like Canada and Mexico. And I think that will also potentially enhance Vietnam's ability to attract even more investment, because some of the provisions of TPP will require Vietnam to make domestic economic reforms that I think will be better for businesses to invest in the country.
Now, organizations like the World Bank do seem to have an optimistic view for Vietnam's economy going forward. Where do you see Vietnam going from here, especially as it tries to pursue this goal of having a middle-class economy?
Sure. I think the opportunity is certainly there. I mean, one of the things you can say about the size of the country, the demographics in terms of a very relatively young population, there's a lot of positive drivers that I think there are at play here in the country. Obviously, as we all know, development is always a tricky science. So as politics have to also evolve along with the economy, I think people are quite bullish on the opportunities there. One thing is certainly very clear. I think Vietnam is very aggressively trying to really promote better relations with the United States, with Europe, as well as with its own neighbors in Asia. So I think they're very much keen to say Vietnam is really going to be on the world stage going forward.